All right, so are you ready to dive into this pretty fascinating collection of recommendations?
Yeah, I'm really intrigued. I mean, getting a glimpse into how a sculptor sees the world, what news catches their eye, it's not something you come across every day.
Right. And the sculptor we're talking about, Hideki Inuma, he doesn't disappoint.
Yeah.
He's got this eclectic mix of stuff, and it's all presented in this kind of stream of consciousness style.
Oh, so it's not like your typical curated list with neatly categorized topics and summaries.
Exactly. It's more like we're getting these unfiltered thoughts straight from his studio, which makes it even more interesting to unpack.
I like that. It's like we're eavesdropping on his creative process in a way. So where do we even begin with this treasure trove of recommendations?
Well, he kicks things off with a burst of enthusiasm for the release of the Dragon Quest III remake. You can almost hear the excitement in his virtual voice.
Ah, classic. Dragon Quest, that takes me back. It's interesting that he's drawn to that kind of fantasy world. Do you think it influences his sculptures in any way?
It makes you wonder, right? Maybe those pixelated landscapes and mythical creatures spark some creative ideas. But then, right alongside Dragon Quest, he mentions Farming Simulator 2025.
Wait, what? Farming simulator? That's a pretty stark contrast, to say the least.
I know, it's like 1 minute you're slaying dragons, the next you're cultivating fields. It speaks to a certain range of interests, the curiosity about both the fantastical and the mundane.
And maybe finding the beauty in both, which is a pretty cool concept for an artist. It's like he's saying inspiration can come from anywhere.
Exactly. And then, just when you think you have him figured out, he throws in this recommendation for a Starbucks hidden menu item, a creme brulee latte customization.
Okay, now that's a curveball, but I kind of love it. It's like this little peek behind the curtain, reminding us that even artists have their everyday routines and guilty pleasures.
It humanizes him, right? Makes him relatable. And it also suggests a certain attention to detail and appreciation for the little things that make life more enjoyable.
Which probably translates into his art as well, noticing those subtle textures, those unexpected color combinations.
Totally. And then we jump into the world of pop culture with his recommendations for Genshin Impact and Holovive events. Have you heard of Holive?
Yeah, it's that agency for VTubers, right? Virtual YouTubers.
Right. So these are digital avatars, but they have personalities, storylines, all that. And they've become this huge phenomenon, especially in Japan. It's interesting that Enuma is tuned into that world.
Definitely. It suggests he's keeping up with the times, exploring how technology is shaping entertainment and culture. Maybe he even sees potential for incorporating those digital elements into his sculptures somehow.
It's possible. I mean, we're seeing more and more artists experimenting with those boundaries between the physical and the digital. Then he throws in a recommendation for a song by a small band, A Woman's Life.
Interesting. So it's not just big name pop culture, he's also seeking out those hidden gems as lesser known artists. Maybe he finds inspiration in their music, or maybe he just appreciates the craft, the storytelling, and the lyrics.
Maybe both. It reminds us that art isn't limited to one medium. A sculptor can be just as moved by a song as they are by a piece of marble. And it makes you wonder, what other artistic influences feed into his work?
Ooh, good question. And that's what I love about this deep dive. We're getting these little clues, these breadcrumbs that lead us deeper into Inuma's world. It's like a puzzle waiting to be solved. And then it's like he shifts gears a little bit. He brings up this news story about the struggles of single mothers in Japan. It was documented by a Dutch filmmaker, actually.
Yeah, it is heavier than some of the other things he's talking about, but I think it speaks to his empathy.
Hmm.
As an artist, he's not just observing the world, he's also feeling it deeply.
Exactly. And it's not just about individual stories either.
Yeah.
He connects this to news about Japan's movement to eliminate violence against women. So he's drawing those connections between personal struggles and larger societal issues.
Right? Like he's saying these things are all intertwined. And it makes you think about the role of art in all of this. Can art be a catalyst for social change? Can it spark conversations and inspire action?
I think it absolutely can. Art has this power to connect with people on an emotional level, to make them think differently, to feel more deeply. And Enuma definitely seems to understand that.
Yeah. And speaking of connections, he also highlights this article, Art Philosophy Makes Business More Colorful. It's about how businesses are starting to embrace artistic principles.
That's interesting. So it's not just about aesthetics, it's about using art to solve problems, to foster creativity, to think outside the box.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder if Inuma sees his own work as bridging that gap between art and the business world. Maybe he's thinking about how his sculptures could inspire a more creative work environment.
It's possible. I mean, artists often have these unique ways of seeing the world. And those insights can be incredibly valuable in all sorts of fields, not just the art world.
Right. Then there's this other article he mentions, Beauty is a Risk. It was published on Biteki.com, which is like this Japanese beauty and lifestyle website.
Hmm. Beauty is a risk. That's a really intriguing title. I wonder what that's about. Is it a commentary on beauty standards? Or maybe the idea that true beauty often comes with vulnerability?
Yeah, it's kind of cryptic. It makes you want to read it just
Yeah,
to find out what he's getting at. But I also like that he leaves it open to interpretation. It sparks curiosity. It gets you thinking.
definitely. And then he goes into some topics that are, you know, maybe a little more technical at first glance, like sustainable architecture and AI's role in the timber industry.
Yeah, it's like he's showing us that he's engaged with these real world issues.
Yeah.
Even as an artist, he's thinking about climate change and the impact of technology.
Right. And it makes you wonder how these things might be influencing his art. Is he incorporating sustainable materials into his sculptures? Is he exploring the intersection of art and AI?
It's definitely food for thought. Then we get hit with this rapid fire round of additional recommendations. Like he just can't contain his enthusiasm. He's got J.R. Tokai tours, an exhibition at the Hakone Open Air Museum, even 8 health habits for brain health.
It's a lot to take in, but it also shows just how curious he is about the world. He's constantly seeking out new information, new experiences.
Yeah, and there's interesting connections there too. Like he mentions the Amazon Music Best of 2024 rankings and Square Enix Music Capsule toys. So clearly music plays a big role in his life.
Makes sense for someone who works with form and rhythm. Those things are all connected. Then there's TV Asahi's participation in the Art to Art project at the Ota Open Factory. So he's highlighting the importance of collaboration, art intersecting with different industries and communities.
And then just to show he's not all about high art, he throws in a recommendation for the Shinjuku Eco Car event. So he's also thinking about sustainability and the role of technology in shaping the future.
He's really covering all the bases. Then he circles back to something we talked about earlier, the B Camp startup event, where a short film platform called Samantha won.
Yeah, he seems particularly excited about this one.
And that excitement is really telling. Short form video content is huge right now, but I think it goes deeper than that for Inuma. As a sculptor, he's working with visual language, conveying complex ideas through form and texture. Short films, with their emphasis on visuals and storytelling, probably resonate with him on a fundamental level.
Oh, that's a great point. It's like he's subconsciously drawn to a medium that mirrors his own artistic process. It makes you wonder, if he were to create a short film, what would it look like?
Now, that would be fascinating to see. And then he drops this bombshell. He creates an AI-powered podcast based on his news pick.
Whoa, AI-powered podcast, that's
Yeah.
next level. So he's not just curating this information, he's using AI to transform it into a new form of artistic expression.
It's like he's created an AI alter ego, a digital extension of his artistic voice. It really makes you think about the future of art. Will AI become a collaborator for artists? Will it change how we define creativity?
Yeah, it's mind-blowing, isn't it? I mean, it makes you wonder, what does an AI-powered podcast even sound like?
Right? Is it just like reciting the news, or is it adding its own, creative spin? It's fascinating.
It is. And I think it speaks to Inuma's willingness to experiment, to push those boundaries.
Yeah,
He's not afraid to embrace the unknown.
absolutely. He's definitely a forward thinker. And I think there's a lot we can learn from him, even if we're not all sculptors or AI enthusiasts.
Yeah. What are some key takeaways for our listeners, do you think?
Well, first off, I think it's a reminder that everyone has a unique perspective. Just like Inuma brings his artistic eye to the news, we all filter information through our own lens, our own experiences, our own interests.
That's a great point. It's like he's encouraging us to be more aware of our own filters, our own biases even,
Yeah.
and to actively seek out different perspectives, maybe step outside of our usual news bubbles.
Exactly. And second, I think it highlights the importance of curation in this age of information overload. I mean, there's just so much content out there. It can be overwhelming.
Totally. It's like drinking from a fire hose sometimes.
Yeah.
So having someone like Inuma with his discerning taste and wide-ranging interests help us navigate all that noise is really valuable.
Right. It's like he's saying, hey, I did some of the heavy lifting for you. Here are some things I think are worth checking out.
Yeah. And third, I think it challenges us to be more open to the unexpected. I mean, look at Inuma's news picks. They're all over the map. Video games, sweet potato festivals, AI podcasts. It's a reminder that inspiration can come from anywhere.
Absolutely. And that sometimes the most interesting discoveries happen when we venture outside of our comfort zones.
So true. It's like he's showing us that the world is full of these fascinating connections if we just take the time to look for them.
Exactly. And I think that's a great message to leave our listeners with. Be curious, explore new ideas, and don't be afraid to connect the dots in unexpected ways.
And who knows, maybe you'll be inspired to create your own AI-powered masterpiece.
Well said. It's been a real pleasure diving deep into the mind of Hideki Enuma today. What a journey.
Yeah, thanks for joining me on this one. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those creative sparks flying.